It's amazing. I'm tired just reading it, but she's, in addition, now has a relationship with the Rebel Media. You can find more information about her at hopkinsworld.com. So, Katie Hopkins, welcome to the United States.
Thank
Great
you.
to have you here.
I think that's very fair, actually. Seems to be a mother. That's exactly what my husband would say on occasion as well. Just a little bit of me seeming to be a mother on a sort of a Friday afternoon at about 4 o'clock. Thank you very much for having me here. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the opportunity to be amongst like-minded people. I said earlier when we were speaking, you know, being in America, being here at CPAC is very much like taking a warm bath. Like, it's very enjoyable to be in, to be amongst. I can say what I think. Everyone's very lovely, and everyone's very charming, and everyone wants to work hard and play fair. I think being in the UK and Western Europe is very much like standing in a cold shower with someone tipping ice on your head. It's kind of like an endurance thing. You just have to withstand it and hope that one day it might stop. And certainly the Islamic invasion of Western Europe is probably not a laughing matter. With her freedom, for us, I fear freedom has truly been lost. And my main message here at CPAC is that America does not want to become like Western Europe. Do not become us. Do not let yourselves fall as the UK has fallen. And I say that with every respect for my country. I love my country. I joined the army, went through Sandhurst, wanted to fight for my country, and now do it by other means. I love the place I came from. The problem is that many of us no longer recognize it anymore, that my inbox is filled with emails from elderly ladies and gentlemen, not that old actually. My mother would tell me off if I said that 72 was old, but from elderly ladies and gentlemen who say to me that they're glad their time's nearly up because they don't want to be around when they see their country finally fall. And that's truly the place we're at. And I would say that if we want to be careful of things, that so much of what we see is not true. One of the examples I've watched and witnessed has been the migrant invasion that has been very much coordinated, paid for, enabled by Western governments. And they use a vehicle called NGOs, non-governmental organisations, charities. We've heard a lot about in recent weeks. Those NGOs, to me, are very much governments at work. And the replacement of white conservative Christians in particular is very clear to observe. I spent a summer going from Libya to Sicily to southern Italy with the migrant trail. We're told that these migrants are on terribly small boats, that they're putting their lives at risk, young women and children fleeing for their lives from Libya. What I actually found was a mafia-controlled rig of people, that small boats, small little dinghies, the ones you see in the media with small children being picked off them, but there's no children to be found. It's all young men of fighting age who've managed to elbow their way to the front, who have the funds to be able to do that and endure Libya. A small tugboat tugs the small dinghy out of Libyan waters into the Med, and then the NGO boats are dispatched to go and rescue those guys on that rig. And those NGO boats, like Save the Children and others, are dispatched on a certain day, coordinated by time, and work as a ferry service across the Med. That is being supported by huge funds at €45 a head per man that arrives on the shores of Italy, and they're given accommodation and they are paid. And now the hotels in southern Italy, of course, it's much more lucrative to fill your hotel with migrants at €45 a day than it is to try and seek the tourist dollar. And so hotels in southern Italy are full of migrants paid €45 a day. And when you ask anyone, where's this coming from? Where's it coming? It's always Rome. All roads lead to Rome when it comes to human trafficking across the Med. That's a curious thing in itself. I spent some time in the camp at Calais, the jungle camp, where these migrants end up, because their ultimate destination is very often the UK, if not Germany. I don't know why anybody would want to go to Germany, but you know, there we are. So they end up in Calais. I went to Calais, I spent a couple nights there, and I wanted to really kind of be amongst it. Too many journalists, I think, turn up, get a bit of B-roll, and leave again after a couple hours, and I always find that a curious kind of journalism, more about them being seen somewhere than them finding out any truths. But at my time there, I was looking hard for women and children and found none. I found at night by the roadside where they try and get onto the trucks, I found one woman with a young son. The next day I went back into camp to try and find her. She was Eritrean. And I was in the wrong area. I was in the Afghan area. And the Afghans were like, what are you doing? No, she's Eritrean. She wouldn't be here. And I went to the Somali area, and no, she's Eritrean. She wouldn't be here. And we imagine somehow in this grand notion we have of people arriving and starting a new life. We like to believe in that we are a nation of migrants. You hear it all the time. Yeah, but the immigrants that arrived in New York wanted to start a better life. The immigrants that arrive in the jungle camp at Calais come with every single old hatred they ever had. The Eritreans hate the Afghans who hate the Somalis. And they couldn't even believe that I was in the Afghan area asking for a Somali woman. The Eritrean woman, I apologise. When I found her eventually, it turned out she didn't have a young son at all. She had a young girl. But by night she dressed her son, her daughter, as a son, as a boy, so that no one would try and take her away. And that's the reality of the camp in the jungle at Calais. And when Trump talked about no-go zones in Sweden and all of the left-wing media mocked him, they don't exist, they said, walking through the pedestrian zone in Stockholm, which is very nice indeed, unless of course an Islamist jihadi drives a truck down it and smashes up our children, as has been the case. But I walked the no-go zones of Sweden. Then only 3 subway stops outside of Stockholm, you hit those suburbs, Rinkeby and others. And there is no white people there. There are no women there with their heads uncovered. A lady, a 3rd-generation migrant, tried to stop me getting off the bus I was on. No, wrong place, wrong person, wrong place, she said. That's in Sweden, in Western Europe. I'm in the wrong, she was frightened for me. Eventually I found a young girl, a white girl, who happened to live in Rinkeby. She couldn't afford to move. And she was broken into a week before. And the police, when she rang them, they couldn't come because it's too dangerous now for the police to police those zones. And when she goes home at night, she's not allowed to carry pepper spray, even though there's rape gangs there. As you'll know, the statistics on rape gangs in Sweden are off the chart. She's not allowed to carry pepper spray because the liberal feminists in Sweden have made it such that a woman accidentally pepper sprayed the wrong member of a rape gang, and she was prosecuted for doing such a thing. So the liberal feminist, she had to hide her face when I interviewed her and wrote this up for a column. She didn't want her face published, not because she was frightened of the immigrant gangs, but she was frightened of the liberal feminists because they would come and attack her for being Islamophobic. And of course, so many of my kind, I don't know what kind that is, people would say I'm screaming, the biggest bitch in Britain is a label, or you know, the British Ann Coulter, or an angry Ellen DeGeneres. I'm not even a lesbian. Very disappointing at times. You know, they'll come for us any which way they can, of course. I've been arrested and interviewed under caution by the Major Crime and Homicide Command. Those are people that deal with serial killers. 2 men in a police station interviewing me about a column I wrote where I called migrants cockroaches. I stand by that, of course. I have been threatened with repatriation from Australia for mentioning that I thought Ebola was a particularly efficient way of cleansing certain types of people. It's a little harsh, I appreciate that, but sometimes you have to be harsh to make a point. They do attack us slightly, but I think once you're being attacked, you know you're certainly over the target. Earlier on this year, 2 people were sent to prison because their plan was to behead me. As a wedding gift, the Muslim lady had asked the Muslim gentleman she was going to marry to behead me. That was her wedding gift. She'd gone out and bought a plastic dummy and a stabbing knife, and he'd practiced stabbing the plastic dummy before coming for me. Unfortunately, they got them first and they've now been sent down, and I live to fight another day. But the threat against our personal individual freedoms for speaking out about the truths that I've gone to find is clearly evident wherever I am. But I would say, I went to a Swedish fire station. It's called the toughest fire station in Sweden. It deals with the hardest fires in the hardest places. And I met the chief fireman. He's an exceptionally good-looking gentleman. So I made excuses to talk for a very long time. But they were just having a new fence and a huge fence built because the fire rigs were under attack by the migrants. They'd come and stolen the cutting equipment because it's useful for breaking into homes. They would steal the truck tyres off the rigs. They would steal anything they could get their hands on. Even to go and respond to a fire in Malmo, they would require a police escort because they have to have someone patrolling the fire engine in order that there isn't stuff stolen from it whilst it's trying to answer a fire. And also because the migrants call in fake fires in order to attack the fire engines and the people serving on them. So actually it's become a kind of disaster zone. Now I said to this gentleman, bear in mind we all talk about walls a lot, I said, is this going to be the way? Are we going to build more walls to keep people out? And he said no. In future we'll build walls to keep the people we love inside. And that's really stayed with me, that line. I've only just got back from South Africa, and that itself looked a little bit dodgy for a while when they confiscated my passport for hate crimes because I'd been investigating the slaughter of white farmers in South Africa 2 weeks ago. And I got my passport back and left. But what I found in South Africa, of course, is precisely that. People live behind huge fences, huge walls, gated communities to keep the minority white population safe. There's only 8% whites left in South Africa. They say within 10 years they'll all be gone because they'll have been hunted to extinction. It strikes me that the world wants to talk about the hunting of the white rhino, but it doesn't talk about the hunting of the white farmer in South Africa. And I think it's a deeply upsetting thing that we're moving to a model where we live behind gates in order to try to be safe. I think that's a very difficult thing. That's what the people of South Africa see. So when I think about freedom, it's a curious idea. But from what I've seen in the passage I've seen throughout Western Europe, from Libya to Sicily to Calais to Sweden in the UK, and then to South Africa, we will indeed end up living behind gated communities in order to keep the people we love safe inside. Thank you very much.
Being here at CPAC is a fantastic experience. It's like being in a warm bath surrounded by like-minded people, whereas being in the UK is kind of like being in a cold shower. It's like an endurance event. For more updates on CPAC and for more of my material, join me at hopkinsworld.com.